Hey guys, my name is David, and you are watching Stories Told. Today, I am going to explain an action, crime, drama movie called Becky. Please be aware, the video contains spoilers. Becky is being questioned by two police officers. She can't seem to recall much from what has happened. She gives a vague answer. The intro rolls in. It shows the events that happened 2 weeks before the interrogation. We see some prisoners beating up one of their fellow convicts. Literally the same things are happening with Becky in her high school. In the prison, Dominic walks past by and hands a shank to one of the guys, to finish the job. He turns around and we can see a swastika tattoo on the back of his head. The fight in the high school is broken up by one of the teachers. The movie portrays the similarities between the US school system and the criminal justice system, totally not over-exaggerating it. The vice principal orders Becky on the PA system to the front office. She gets picked up by her father, Jeff, and they drive away. At the same time, the prisoners are put in the police van. The camera switches between the police van and Becky's father's car. The inmates look at each other and blink. They start to execute their plan to get out of the car. Apex kills the inmate sitting next to him. Dominic notifies the guards and they pull over. Becky's sitting in the back with the family dog and she's listening to music. She has a strained relationship with her father. It doesn't really seem that they are on the same page. They decide to pull over to a gas station to fill up the car and grab some snacks. Becky slips some gummy worms into her pocket, while Jeff watches the TV broadcast about the inmates that escaped. Becky looks around and seems disgusted by all the people around her. She walks outside and sits down. She pulls out her phone and watches some old videos about her and her mother that she made. Her mother was suffering from cancer and she was in the hospital. They seem to be on really good terms. Back in the car, her father once again tries to initiate conversation. They pass a sign that says Lake Sinclair. Becky flips that her father brought her here. She starts to mess with the radio to silence her father, who doesn't seem quite fond of this whole scene she's making. He threatens Becky with grounding her for 2 weeks if she doesn't turn off the radio. She in fact doesn't turn off the radio, but at least stop pressing the buttons. Jeff scolds her for stealing the gummy worms, but she just shrugs her shoulder. They finally arrive at the lake house. Becky, still being angry at her father, tells him that her mother wouldn't have wanted to sell the house. Jeff finally tells her that they are not selling the house. She's full of joy, but it doesn't last long, as Jeff's new partner, Kayla, and her son, Ty, pull up in her car. She thanks Becky for her generosity to share the weekend and her father with them. Jeff shows Dora, the family's dog, to them, and Becky makes a rude comment about it. Jeff asks her to get the other dog, Diego, but she refuses to take Ty with her. They agree to make s'mores for dinner. Back at the highway, Dominic and Apex, dressed up as cops, are stopping a vehicle. He asks the driver to step out of his car. The driver mentions that he lives nearby. He decides not to shoot the guy but rather knocks him out, which still leaves a huge blood splatter on the back window. Becky walked Diego down to the lake where they enjoy a little alone time from the family. They're having dinner but she hasn't even touched the food. Jeff talks about how tough things have been the past year, but they need to move forward. He announces that they are getting married with Kayla. This upsets her. She insults Kayla and runs out of the house. She cries outside and questions her father about it. She still doesn't want to accept the fact that her mother is not with them anymore, so she just walks off with Diego. Kayla is grabbing the dishes when the bell rings. She decides to check it out. Becky has arrived at her old treehouse where she starts wrecking the place. She notices a picture on the wall with her whole family painted on it. This makes her remember how she used to play the ukulele for her mother in the hospital. She puts the picture back on the wall and pets the dog. Jeff walks back and finds out that Kayla has opened the door to Dominic. He claimed to have lost his dog in the woods. Becky comes across a strange key in his old locker. The key's bow is formed in the shape of a Vulcanite symbol. It catches her eye, so she decides to keep it for later. Kayla pours a glass of water for Dominic. While he's walking out, he notices that their dog is a cane corso. He starts to ramble about how their dog doesn't look pure, and his dog, a Rottweiler, is purebred. Just the usual neo-Nazi stuff. He even looks at Jeff and Kayla, saying that breeding with other breeds gets the worst out of both. She politely asks him to leave, but when Jeff opens the front door, Apex greets him with the Undertaker's classic chokeslam move. He chases down Kayla and Ty, then breaks her phone in half with ease. He shows mercy and orders them to leave at the side door. Once they are in the woods, they're stopped by Cole and Hammond, the remaining 2 inmates. Ty says that they are waiting for Becky. Dora starts running at them, which creeps Cole out, so he decides to gun down the dog. Becky witnesses the whole scene from the treehouse with a binocular. She leaves the woodhouse, leaving Diego in there. Dominic questions Apex about the whereabouts of Kayla and Ty, but just before he could answer, they are brought in by the other two guys. They're seated on the sofa next to each other. Hammond mentions that Cole shot the dog, who they think is Becky. This upsets Jeff, but Kayla is quick to answer that Becky was a sweet old dog. He catches on with her lie and calms down. Dominic takes off his hat and they notice the tattoo on his head. He mentions that they're gonna get what they came for and be on their way. He goes down to a basement and finds a small container, but to his surprise, it is empty. He notices some child drawings on the wall. All the while Becky sneaks back to the house. She finds her room wrecked. She grabs the walkie-talkie just before Dominic comes up from the basement. He brings out Becky's backpack from the room and shows it to Cole, who makes the brilliant assumption that dogs don't wear backpacks. Dominic finds out that Becky is a little girl. He explains that he's looking for a key with the symbol on it. None of them knows about the key, so that leaves Becky the last one to question. Jeff lies about her whereabouts, but Dominic reads him like a book. He pulls out his gun saying that he brought his lie detector. Jeff still stays with his statement. Dominic appreciates his dishonesty by shooting Kayla in the leg. Just before he shoots Ty, Becky checks in on the walkie-talkie. She insults them, and lies about calling the cops. They come to a conclusion that she mustn't be far away, as the toy walkie-talkie doesn't cover that much distance. They take her family as a hostage. They take Jeff out to the fireplace to make some well-deserved s'mores. Dominic blackmails her. He tells her they're looking for something and threatens to hurt Jeff if she doesn't bring it to him. Becky misspeaks and mentions the key, even though he never said it was a key. With a blazing hot metal rod, he burns Jeff's face. He gives the walkie-talkie to Jeff. He makes an apology to Becky, and asks her to run away as fast as she can. Dominic takes out the hot rod and sticks it in Jeff's belly. Becky agrees to come out and give them the key. She runs back to the shed for it. Jeff somehow manages to take down the two fine gentlemen and breaks free. Dominic guns down Jeff right in front of Becky. He runs up to her and demands the key. With anger, she gouges out his eye, and runs off. Dominic flees back to the house and asks Hammond to cut his dangling eyeball off. They struggle to cut it off, as a child's scissors are not the best tool for the job. He decides to finish it himself and cuts it with a knife, and orders everybody to get out and find her. Cole finds Becky and Diego in the woodhouse. He tries to reason with her to get the key. She takes the key out of her pocket and agrees to give it to him. He mentions that her mom and little brother will be safe, which angers her more. She looks at the picture, recalling memories about her past. This reassures her not to give up without a fight. She makes weapons out of a ruler and some colored pencils. She throws out a coin as a bait, then jumps on Cole. She goes full psycho, stabbing him repeatedly with the homemade shanks, and finishes the job off with the ruler. Back at the house, Kayla asks Apex to change her bandages. She tries to reason with him as she sees a good man in him, but he walks off without an answer. Becky walks back to the treehouse to clean her face. Dominic gives the gun to Apex and asks him to point it at his heart. He explains how much time and effort went into making plans for this very day. Apex mentions that he isn't capable of killing any more kids. Dominic asks him to kill him, but he refuses and reassures him of his loyalty. He takes off his shirt and his body is full of Nazi tattoos. They salute each other. Meanwhile, Becky sneaks back to the house. She throws the walkie-talkie on the balcony. It's wrapped around with Cole's clothes. She tells them a little poem about a little girl, who is capable of horrible things. Dominic asks Kayla to tell Becky to come back. She replies with spitting in his face. She explains that she won't listen to her anyways, and they've killed her only living parent, so there's no way that she'll come back. Down at the lake, Becky prepares a trap using a fishing line. Hammond finds the corpse of Cole. Becky insults him and he starts chasing her down in the woods. They get to the pier where he walks into her trap. He trips over and falls into a plank with nails sticking out. She hits him in the head multiple times with another plank and jumps on top of him. After this little piggy ride, Hammond falls into the water. He cries out for help because he can't swim. Apex finds the corpse of Cole and the killer tools. Becky goes full psycho once again and grinds Hammond to pieces with the motorboat. Diego finally finds a way out of the wooden fort. Apex meets Becky down at the lake. Diego tries to intervene, but he knocks the dog out with one punch. He grabs Becky, but she breaks free after biting him. He once again does his favorite WWE move, the classic choke slam on Becky, and even punches her in the face. But he can't finish her off, and rather offers her to walk away in safety. He says that he is done with this and leaves. Diego wakes up and she runs off to the dog. The sun is settling and Dominic's impatience starts to grow as time passes. Once it's dark, Becky sneaks back to the house, and apologizes to her dad. She walks up to the window and draws a smiley with one eye. Before Dominic notices him, Kayla shouts at him, grabbing his attention. He once again says some neo-Nazi bullshit, and hits her. The car alarm goes off outside and he decides to check it out. He thought Apex have come back. Kayla limps to the kitchen to grab a weapon. Outside, he walks next to the van and the door suddenly opens. When he walks closer, Diego bursts out and grabs a hold of his arm. He manages to get the dog off from him. He pulls out his gun and calls for Becky, but she isn't in the van. She is in another car. She starts the car and runs Dominic over, but she doesn't know how to hit the brakes, so she crashes into a tree. The car safety system automatically notified the police about the crash. She runs into the house and grabs a gas canister. Dominic limps over to the garage looking for Becky. Becky starts singing from the woods, luring him to the fireplace. He tries to convince Becky to come with him, as he sees the potential in her. She grabs a water gun which is filled with gasoline to the brim. She sprays it over the fire, lighting Dominic up. He puts it out rather easily and catches her. He slams her to the ground and starts choking her. Just before he finishes her off, Apex jumps in to save her. Dominic fails to convince Apex for the final time and fires a bullet into him. He doesn't go down so easily and he pushes Dominic over to the road. Becky comes out with a quad from the garage and grinds Dominic, just as she did with Hammond. Apex makes an apology but Becky finishes him off cold-hearted. Kayla and Ty come outside and sit next to Becky as the police arrive. Back in the interrogation room, she continues to prevaricate. The sheriff explains his concerns about the violence she committed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks.